From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Paul, Mission Control Decant. Most importantly, you are here, and that makes this stuff they don't want you to know. This is our listener mail segment for the week. As the Cenobites say, we have such wonders to show you. As Willy Wonka used to say, we're doing the come with us to a land of pure imagination. But these are pure facts. We will be exploring some things that may not be suitable for all listeners in today's episodes. Just a heads up on that. Today we're going to hear from Jen, Lori, and Anton. Maybe not in that order. Where do you think we should start, guys? We got a decades deep cover up. We've got a spooky story. We've got another weird possible corruption case that may be on the minds of many Americans today.
We can start wherever. I was kind of hoping to hold off on the spooky story as a palate cleanser between the two, if that's okay.
Well, should we dive headlong into pedophiles?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Is that a weird way of putting it? I guess it is. I'm sorry. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off, guys. We got another pedophile story for you, a systematic pedophile story from out of Germany. A listener by the name of Anton sent us this. I know you guys have tread carefully when covering news like this. I looked into this a few months ago, and you can find quite a few reputable news outlets covering this bizarre and wildly unethical story, although it has had nowhere near as much exposure as it deserves. Sorry to bring this to your attention. Thanks, Anton. We accept your apology, but I would love to get your take. And he sends us a link to an article with the headline, Berlin authorities place children with pedophiles for 30 years. Take a second to breathe that one in. Placed children with pedophiles for 30 years. Now, you might be asking yourself, was this an oversight? They just weren't aware of their records, their sex offender record, and they accidentally placed children with pedophiles for 30 years? No, it was in fact a program called the Kentler Project in West Berlin, where the government routinely placed homeless children with pedophile men because of a concept that was spearheaded by this one individual that posited that pedophile men would make ideal foster parents. A study found that this practice went on for many decades. So this all goes back to a gentleman by the name of Helmut Kentler, who in the 1970s conducted psychological experiments. He was a psychology professor. He put forth this idea that homeless children ought to be placed with pedophile men because they would make for a particularly loving foster parents. And then an investigation by the University of Hildesheim found that authorities in Berlin not only looked the other way, but actually condoned this practice for around 30 years. The idea of sexual contact between foster parents and children was essentially approved, was essentially thought of as not that big a deal. Possibly even like a positive thing, like some sort of form of nurturing. Berlin's child welfare offices and governing senate, according to this article in DW and in multiple corroborating articles, and again, that research from Hildesheim University, they turned a blind eye or even actually approved of these placements. Now, actually only a few years ago, two of the victims of this program have come forward to tell their story, and then the researchers are beginning to dig back through their archives to, fill in the gaps and conduct new interviews. What they found was a, quote, network across educational institutes, the State Youth Welfare Office, and the Berlin Senate, in which pedophilia was accepted, supported, and even defended.
Jesus.
And there are going to be there are going to be people in the crowd who want to know a specific age. So I believe a lot of these were disadvantaged youths, anywhere from 13 to 15 years old.
Exactly right. Just
some who have been forced into sex trafficking as a means of survival. This has been reported. Anton, you might find this interesting. Irish Times did a great piece on this back in 2016. It's weird, though, because this was not something I think many people outside Western Europe are aware of. And you have to wonder, is this like, how Unit 731 in the Pacific Theater of World War II, how that was? The research data they gathered there was useless. They were just torturing people and calling it research. So you have to wonder whether Helmut Kentler believed in these theories, or whether it was some sort of rationalization for turning these very vulnerable children over to, as you said, Noel, known child abusers, at least one who had a criminal record for this. And I think do we know the extent of the program? Do we know how many children we're talking about over this multi-decade span?
It's something that I think would actually be worth a deeper dive, because I really only read the handful of articles that that were cross-referenced in this DW article. But it almost has the appearance of, like, to what I think you were kind of getting at, Ben, is it almost feels like so many of the foster fathers were high-profile academics from, highly respected institutions like the Max Planck Institute or Berlin's Free University, and also the Odenwald School in Hesse, West Germany. That was actually in and of itself at the center of a massive pedophilia scandal in the not too distant past. So yeah, I mean, like, it's true. This reminds me to a degree, it's not exactly the same, of the piece that you covered on a recent, either Strange News or Listen to Mail episode about Oxfam and some of their work, in Haiti, essentially recruiting, people in absolute need, as sex workers. This I would need to see more research in this and dig deeper into the study that was done by the university. But because of the high profile academics, it almost seems like kind of like a weird kind of pedophile ring for the elite. At least it has that feel. I'm not making accusations here. I'm just saying, it has sort of like an organizational quality to it that makes me think perhaps these were being vetted, with government support.
From what it seems now, the big questions are, first off, Kentler cannot be asked about this, Anton. He passed away in 2008, being the subject of controversy, but not the subject of criminal investigation, as far as we know. We also don't know, at least the official word from the investigators in the later studies, is that we don't know to what extent the German government turned a blind eye to this or tacitly agreed. We don't know to what extent they were aware, at least the authorities, people in supervisory positions. But it definitely happened. It's not a conspiracy theory. It was some sort of conspiracy. I am immensely fortunate that I wasn't familiar with Helmut Kentler's work before this story broke, because this story did a couple things. This story kind of broke and then rebroke, keeping up with the ongoing investigation. I think I speak for our whole crew when I say our hearts go out to the survivors of this horrific practice, many of whom are still alive. The 70s weren't too long ago. So
yeah, you'll have to forgive me over here. I'm the disgust I think that we're all feeling. I'm just feeling it very strongly right now, at this kind of the condoning of this from a highly educated person. That, how do they describe him? In a leading position. This guy Helmut Kentler was in a leading position at Berlin Center for Educational Research at the time in the 70s. That this person would then put people with folks, and again, we're talking about thousands of kids because I haven't seen a lot of the numbers, but I did see in the Irish Times article that around 1970 or in the 70s when this was occurring, there were thousands of children who were placed throughout this program. And they're talking about people that they were placed with. So, several, it says here, were high-profile academics, high-ranking members of the Max Planck Institute, Berlin's Free University, and this place called the Odenwald School, which is a whole story of its own.
This also occurs in the context of a lot of these predators were using the sexual revolution as kind of a cover for their own rationalizations. And the public discourse about this specific genre of abuse was held in a disturbingly transparent way, with people actively lobbying for things like the decriminalization of adults and children. And, of course, the rationalization was that this would be somehow consensual. But as we have proven in previous episodes, and as science has borne out, informed consent from a child is impossible. You know what I mean? Like these people were lying, and they knew they were lying. At this point, I from what I understand, that study in June 2020 that got released, Noel, I believe that they're going to at least offer financial compensation to the survivors. Is that correct?
Yes, they are looking to pay some, I guess, damages, for lack of, I guess that's the right term, but also just to kind of get to the bottom of it. And then the government is now kind of on board. There's no more turning a blind eye, and they're like, wanting to, this is actually like, I mean, not only is this a human rights, violation, absolute, bungle, it's really a horrible PR look, that like, oh, the government is that laissez-faire that they condone pedophilia. I think any of us would agree that that is a bridge too far.
Yeah, this one just makes me angry.
In the same way that the Oxfam story made us all angry. Because it's, again, it's a situation where you're supposed to be helping these underprivileged children who need support, and they're literally being thrown to the wolves.
And unfortunately, while every group like this, every crime ring of this sort has its own distinct characteristics, they are unfortunately not unique. It is, we've talked about this before. I can't remember whether on or off the air, but we do take pains to avoid being exploitative or sensationalistic or alarmist about this stuff, because it does not help the survivors of these abhorrent acts, With that being said, if you have experienced this network, or if you live in Germany and can give us some insight on this, we would love to hear from you. Or if you have experienced a network like this in some other part of the world. But thank goodness there are ethical and conscientious investigators on the case in Germany. And to say, Noel, and Anton, I know about you guys, but, I'm just walking through just the bar napkin math here. I guess the odds are kind of against a lot of them being alive right now, because we said the original guy passed away in 2008. So, because these people would have been adults, right? They're highly placed academics. They would have been adults in the 70s, 60s, and so on.
Yeah, it's true. And, I think this is absolutely important to bring up now so people can start doing their own research. But I would love to dig in. Love is a strong word here, but the research being conducted ongoingly by the University of Hildesheim to see, what they found and maybe a little bit more detail around the actual predators in this story.
Hear, hear. And thank you for bringing this to our attention. Gentlemen, I propose that we pause for a word from our sponsor and move to another story, holding true, to your point, Noel, that this does deserve a deeper dive in the future. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a third eye squeegee, and then we'll be right back for a very different kind of story.
Okay, we took a break, did a little reset, and now we are back with something that is also corrupt and weird, but not the same kind of the corrupt and weird. And it is a letter from Jen B. You write to us and you say, is it possible that Parler is actually just a long con intended to divide and weaken us? Rebecca Mercer is financially tied to both companies, Cambridge Analytica and Parler, and has backed multiple political candidates. Ted Cruz, says Jen, was an early Parler adopter and a benefactor of Mercer as well. The platform is pretty crappy, terrible security, and in general just seems, in general... Okay. Sorry, Jen, I just think there was an opportunity for a pun there. But in general, seems slapped together, maybe not planned to exist in the long term. This is interesting. So, Jen, first we've got to catch up everybody else. Parler, I'm sure if you've listened to the show, you are familiar with it. It is was what's called an alt-tech microblogging social networking service or app. And here in the U.S., it's known for having a large user base of people who would be described sometimes as very conservative or further on the spectrum to far right wing, like to the level of supremacist anti-Semites and so on. There are, of course, people on Parler who were on Parler who were not part of that. But you guys remember what happened with Parler recently, around the time Twitter and various other large tech companies took then President Donald Trump's, took his handles and his accounts offline. Parler also found itself in a fix. This service, this social networking service, got its leash pulled hard by Amazon Web Services. Folks, you'll remember when we talked about Amazon in the past, they make some money selling people stuff, but they make a lot of money running web services for other companies and corporations. So Parler was going to take Amazon to court for this, to say, you don't have the right to deny us our service. And it looked like Parler was set to disappear, to go gentle into that good night, as Dylan Thomas would say. But I wanted to ask you guys, before we go further with this story, were any of us on Parler? Did anybody make an account to check it out? Anything like that?
I had not touched it.
Thank you. No, thank you. Oh my God.
But I don't have any of the social on my personal phone or anything, so I wouldn't have it.
You're a desktop social guy, right?
Not really.
All right, we'll play these reindeer games. I myself did not have a hand in Parler either. Their security seemed notably lax. I think we talked in an earlier listener mail or strange news segment about becoming a verified citizen and having to share your ID and stuff like that.
Well, not only was it lax, in the same way that AWS pulled the plug, and also the app stores pulled the plug, so did their security platform. They basically said, yeah, no, we don't want to be associated with you anymore.
That's right. And it looks as though that you're onto something, Jess, with Rebecca Mercer in particular. Rebecca Mercer is a co-founder of Parler and also was a co-founder of Cambridge Analytica. So this person in specific does have a provable hand in both of these, but also this person in specific is a very wealthy person. Very wealthy people do stuff like this all the time. So how anomalous is it? How involved is Mercer in the day-to-day? Or is this just, like a thing in the portfolio? You know what I mean? Like how hands-on, hands-off is this person?
Yeah, exactly. That is a good question. I'm just reading a lot about this for the first time, Ben, in some of the latest reporting out of from Al Jazeera.
Mm-hmm.
It is very interesting too, because there are many people who work for Parler, who are employees, who creating this app, making sure it functions all the time. It is interesting to note that, at least according to the latest reporting, as we're recording this, the employees did not quit. There's an internal person there commenting saying the employees of Parler did not quit when everything seemed to be going to crap. And they were committed to continuing their service in some way once they could get it back up.
There's the plot twist, Jen, because just like that old Mark Twain quote, the reports of Parler's death may be greatly exaggerated. You see, just recently, just like yesterday, I believe, Parler partially reappeared with help from not a U.S.-based technology firm, but a Russian-based technology firm. Now, look, folks, I know this week I am setting a terrible precedent by continually talking about various aspects of Russia. But this was interesting because Parler was on so many people's minds, and it became one of those public conversations, right, about the responsibility of a tech company or a platform versus the rights of a user, whether they're a verified citizen or what have you. The Russian company in question is called DDoS Guard. They're a distributed denial of service protection company, and like their big competitor will probably be something like Cloudflare. So I don't know. This is the thing. If you believe that there is something suspicious about Mercer's connection to Cambridge Analytica, which we did a show on, and to Parler, then I imagine this is another feather in the conspiracy cap, isn't it? I mean, does it seem suspicious to you guys, or is this just like capitalism at play?
Suspicious?
Well, yeah, because with Cambridge Analytica, the big deal there was gathering up of information, right, from other social media networks, specifically Facebook, right? Maybe I'm misremembering that. I think that's correct. And then with just having this group or this person, this individual connected back to another social media network that appeared to be growing in popularity, yeah, I think it makes complete sense. Maybe I'm not seeing the bad part here, unless we're talking about just gathering up more private information from users. Do you think that's happening here?
Well, I mean, every social media app does gather and scrape whatever they can. That's why you don't have those apps on your phone, right? But I would say, yes, everybody does this. The concern for people at this point would be who controls that gathered data. Is it a friendly government? Is it an antagonistic government? Is it, the big tech companies that already would have this data? I think that's what people are worried about, and I think that's a valid worry to have. But the big difference here, let's be honest, the big difference is mainly that Russia is not part of Five Eyes. It's like the main difference in terms of who gets what.
This is unrelated, kind of, but I don't know if you guys saw this. When Parler was initially shut down and taken off the App Store, there aren't as many now, but then there were quite a few on eBay, unlocked iPhones with Parler app pre-installed for going for quite a bit of money. And right now I'm only seeing one, but it's $1,000 for an iPhone 11, and it specifically says with Parler app, 64 gigs, black, unlocked. Good luck. Yeah.
If the service is down,
exactly. I think it's a scam. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's the website. The website was reachable again as of the 18th, I want to say, January 18th. And the CEO, all that would happen if you went to the website was there would be a message from the CEO saying that he was working to restore functionality. So if that site is restored and if their infrastructure comes back, then users of Parler will be able to see and post comments on the site. The app, however, and it's part of the reason, Noel, that mention of eBay is so interesting, because the app is banned from Apple and Google stores. There's probably going to continue to be controversy about this. But yeah, if Mercer is involved and is hands-on, is her team collecting this data? And to your point, Matt, where are they sending it? What are they doing? Are they giving it to like campaigns in the future? I could see that being a good business model.
Oh, for sure. I could see that happening. Yeah, but I don't know, man. Oh, I'm reading here, Ben, something about changing, because AWS was the big issue, right? So they're looking to another company. You said that was the DDoS company.
DDoS is security, I think.
DDoS is they're doing security, but then the domain is actually, it looks like it may be going to another service called Epic. Is that what I'm actually reading here? There's one called EPIK. That's where their domain is registered now. I'm just trying to follow some of these threads that are being reported, because new info is coming out pretty quickly, given that just a few days ago is when it essentially kind of came back.
So there's another aspect here. Will this benefit this organization? Will this benefit this company? Because if there are a lot of people who see themselves as perhaps more on the pro-America side or the pro-patriotic side, however it would be phrased, more conservative side perhaps, are those users going to return? Are they going to feel comfortable with this new Russian association with the app? I mean, it's a good question. I don't know what the answer is. And I'm sure not everybody will answer the same way. But then what would Mercer do with that information? We want to hear from you. This story is still developing. I think there are going to be plot twists aplenty as it continues. Obviously, the three of us are not super into any non-governmental thing that requires your social security number or a photo of your driver's license. I mean, what's next? Blood type, list of fears, known frequencies of defecation or something, like medical technology gets involved with social media. Next thing you know, your BPMs are just updating automatically. That's the world we're headed toward. This is a small piece of it.
Well, yeah, I also think the extra funny part about that is, we've talked about there's a certain paranoia and like internet kind of fear mongering kind of culture wrapped up in things like QAnon and some of these super far right conspiracy movements. And yet these folks are just giving like their geotag data to this app in utter trust and like, completely having it leaked because of lax security measures. So, I mean, all of these folks that are essentially outed and doxed themselves by taking selfies and live streams, now we're starting to see all those videos trickle out. And some of the really, from the heart of the Capitol insurrection situation are quite troubling. Like actual beatings, being meted out to security guards and things like that, or rather Capitol Police. So I just think it's fascinating. There's so much distrust and this desire for anonymity in these kind of scenes. And yet this is like the exact opposite, where they're literally uploading their driver's license. Agreed.
And that's part of what social media in general does. We've talked about in the past. Like it drives you. The aim is to drive you to ultimately erode your own boundaries of privacy to whatever degree that company feels viable and profitable for them, which doesn't necessarily make them bad. It just means that we should all be aware of what their motive is. So with
Do you guys want to take it super conspiratorial, Ben?
Sure, let's go.
Yeah, let's get super conspiratorial. So let's say you do have another state that wants to activate a small group of the populace that does happen to be armed and is adamant in their viewpoint. And
let's make it Bhutan. Let's see, Bhutan wants to do it.
Okay.
Sure, Bhutan wants to do it, and they happen to have a web hosting service, and they happen to have access to bots and access to other ways of infiltrating a social network that they happen to host. You could ostensibly push the needle enough, generate further resentment towards whatever power that bees, whatever power that exists, and foment enough to where you could spark perhaps a revolution. That's taking it really far.
Is it though? I mean, isn't that what the Arab Spring was? But like that was viewed positively because it was an insurrection against, oppressive forces.
In Libya, there was a lot of social media support for intervention. And then later it turned out that the entire reason for intervention in Libya was for France to be able to control the currency or retain control of the currency. I don't know.
No, I'm not trying to nitpick at all. I just think it's interesting because it's almost like, the folks that are into this whole Parler thing or into this whole movement, they would argue that they're freedom fighters and they're rebelling against an oppressive regime. And, oftentimes that argument holds water. Here, I would argue it definitely doesn't. But, we always say one person's freedom fighters, another person's terrorists. So that, does the medium play a part in that? In that role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love your point about the Arab Spring, man. I think that should be brought up in the conversations more often. But if it's super conspiratorial, okay, Matt, so Bhutan has moved away from gross national happiness, and now they're into asymmetrical warfare. And they do it through social media. I mean, there's a question then, how much influence do they actually have? And how much do they need to have, right?
If you're that deep in the infiltration of the app itself, of the hosting of all of these things, I think there are numerous ways that you could game the system enough to get a message out. It doesn't mean the message would be effective. It doesn't mean everybody would bite on that bait, but it does mean that the potential could be there. And like you said, it could be that potential could exist across any social media network, across any web hosting service. And that doesn't mean it's true. That's why we're calling this section very super conspiratorial.
Well, also, Jen, what I love about this question is I think there absolutely is a plausible connection between Cambridge Analytica and Parler. Without having hard proof of this, other than they share the same co-founder, I think it is possible, if not plausible, that you would use the information gleaned from one company to help your other company succeed if possible, because that's what business owners do. You know what I mean? That's the consolidation of various industries, like we see with trust, with the formation of trust. Like Henry Ford didn't want to just own a car factory. He wanted to own the mines. He wanted to build his own rubber plantation. He did, by the way. He called it Fordlandia. It's in Brazil. It's a huge failure because it did work for a bunch of reasons. That's neither here nor there, but we do think this bears keeping an eye on. I want to hear your opinion about Cambridge Analytica, possible connection to other things. Go on a weird Bob Ross conspiracy journey with us and string some points together. We'd love to hear from you. With that being said, with all that stuff we've said about social media, if you are watching this on youtube.com/conspiracy stuff, smash that like button. Continue the conversation on Here's Where It Gets Crazy on Facebook. We're going to pause for a moment, give you time to do that, and we'll be back with more listener mail.
All right, and we're back. So everybody, we're going to take this party to a whole different level. Are you ready for my favorite listener correspondence that we've had in quite a long time? Are you ready for it? I wasn't ready for it. I was not ready when
maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not.
Went into my eye holes.
I know this one too, but I read it and I'm still not sure whether I'm ready for it, but let's give it a go.
I'm just going to read this and we'll talk about it afterwards. This comes from Lori. Good evening. I've waited to process what happened before emailing you guys. The week after Halloween, that's 2020, my favorite holiday, I woke up around 5 a.m. from a dream where my loved one and I were cuddling while watching television. Note, Lori does not live with her significant other. She is dreaming about being with her significant other who is not at her house. Coming back in. I woke up lying on my left side, that's important, alone in my bed in my home. And then my eyes shot open and I tried to stay as still as possible because as I lay there staring at the wall, I felt my toes curled around his toes. I still felt toes, but I was alone in my bed. I was scared to roll over. I was afraid to move at all. Then the toes were gone. I kept telling myself it was just a fading dream and that I'm not going to see anything when I roll over, and I roll over. This lightning white figure in the shape of a very tall, thin man sat up. We were face to face. I could see through him. I kept reminding myself that I was awake. Then the man spoke loud, with a deep voice, and very, very fast. So fast that I have no idea what he was saying. I said, "No, no, no," and he disappeared. I stayed there for a bit, then I had to go get my oldest son to sleep with me. Okay, we're going to pause here for a moment. First of all, what an experience, right? This feels similar to what we just discussed with our DMT entities that we've seen, or that humans have been experiencing, where there's this energy being that somehow manifests. It reminds me of sleep paralysis, especially laying on the side there, experiencing something like that. But there are reasons that we're going to get into why it doesn't feel like either of those things, why it isn't either of those things. Do you guys have any reactions to that first section there?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think you nailed some of the common aspects here, like the idea that the experience could be sleep paralysis, which can be terrifying, right? It's one of the episodes that we've had the most response to over the years. It makes me wonder too about the sense that we don't talk about often enough, proprioception, which is the sensation of where your body parts are in space, even if you are not looking at them directly. Like that ties into things like the phantom hand experience that some people report or phantom limb when they experience an amputation. It also ties into this part of your story, Lori. You feel these toes, but you know you're alone in your bed. So you're feeling the sensation of something that is not part of your body. I'm interested by it. We got to keep going, because I got to tell you, Lori, I don't know how you went back to sleep.
Well, we can keep going, and we'll talk about that. I just want to say I talked to Lori for quite a while today before recording this, and she says that she has experienced sleep paralysis since she was a kid. She knows exactly what it feels like. She knows what the experience is, and this was not that. She says
Excellent.
She was not still asleep when it occurred, and she was able to physically roll over in bed, and then was be able to sit up, and still was having this visual stimulation of this being that she described. I asked her, a couple of times, like, describe to me more what you're looking at, and she said he was just lightning-like. He was white as lightning, and I could see through him, but he was as long as me, and you could tell it was in the shape of a person. And I only say it was male because the voice I heard was so deep. Really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and from what I understand, based just on the letter here, Lori, you said when this figure is speaking, they're speaking in a deeper voice, but they're speaking very, very quickly. Is that correct? Matt, when you and Lori spoke, were you able to get a sense of what, if anything, this figure was attempting to communicate, or even just snatches of phrases?
She said she was unable to tell, even if he was speaking English. It was difficult to tell. She said the utterances were so quick and deep that it was just she was experiencing such fear, like such a reaction to it, that she doesn't remember any of that. She doesn't recall exactly what was being said. And it's fascinating to me that perhaps this person or this thing wasn't even speaking English. But this is the point where I think we should continue down the letter, because there's more here, and Lori experienced more. She says, after this experience, she fell back to sleep immediately.
Crazy.
Oh,
how?
Well, because she said her oldest son came to join her in bed. He's a teenager. She probably felt safe with him. She was able to fall back asleep. However, the next day, my son came home from school. He was pale and exhausted. When I asked him what was wrong, he told me that he couldn't go back to sleep after this whole thing had happened and he joined her in bed because he kept hearing a voice that sounded like his voice, and it was mumbling against the far bedroom wall. Okay. And Lori says he's correct. The man's voice was very similar to my son's, but in a deeper register. And that is what Lori confirmed to me, that both she and her son experienced this weird thing where it sounded like an older version of her son speaking. So that right there kind of blew my mind. And it made me start thinking about the Terminator franchise when there's time travel involved. And, you know, there's the lightning orb essentially that transports someone back through time. Just made me think about a lightning being that somehow was her son time traveling. Not saying that's what it is, but it made my mind reel.
You know, I was thinking not just specifically of Terminator here, but I was thinking of the concept of non-linear experiences with time.
So let's not stop. Let's keep going through this. So Lori says that this made her realize that there are a lot of other things that she had previously discounted that she and her family had experienced. She says that there were like coincidences that she rationalized. There's weird stuff. So on 2 different occasions, she said her child's bed, she's got 2 children, one is older, one is younger. Her younger child's bed was pushed out from the wall towards the middle of the room. It's a twin-size bed, so not huge and heavy, but it's still hefty, especially for a 3-year-old. And she was just wondering why it had happened. She figured her older son probably went in there and moved the bed. She spoke with both her sons. Neither of them had been in the room. Neither of them had moved the bed. They just thought, okay, that's a little weird. They pushed it back. But then it happened again. And she couldn't figure out what was going on. Her father was even involved, like thinking there was something weird going on there. Then on several different nights, she's awoken to the sound of a man mumbling at the furthest side wall of her bedroom. Also, the sounds of someone physically rustling around in that area of the room. Mm-hmm. She even experienced at one point that same voice rushing towards her. So like a voice beginning at the far end of a room and then moving towards her, just a disembodied voice moving towards her.
I swear to God, that immediately makes my mind go to a very popular horror movie sound design technique where the voice has reverb on it that's flipped backwards. So it kind of reverbs into the voice. And I kind of picture that like as a rushing kind of like, you know, quality of like it moving through space at you. I've certainly never experienced anything like that, but that's just immediately what my mind hones into.
Sound localization. Yeah, there's another thing that's important here for this detail, Lori, which is that if you can localize or sense the direction and location of a sound, then it means that you are hearing these things through both ears, which is an important neurocognitive detail. Please continue, Matt. Well, because, you know, sometimes people have said they've only heard something in one ear. It's a small detail, but an important one to consider.
One of the things I love about Lori, when I spoke with her, she's very much attempting to rationalize everything. So she's attempting to figure out, well, what's the common denominator here? What's the most rational thing? It was probably my neighbor's television that was too loud and I was just hearing it and I was experiencing that when I hear the mumbling. There are a couple times when her bed would move right around 5 a.m., sometimes a little earlier, especially when her alarm wouldn't go off. She said her bed would be physically shaking and she would wake up to the physical movement of her bed rather than an alarm or her son coming in to wake her up the way he would sometimes. She's noticing a couple other things where there are objects that are displaced around the house or knocked over. And there's even an instance where all of her light bulbs went out on the same day, all the light bulbs in the place where she lives, which, you know, that would be super unnerving if that occurred. Or it could just be an you could explain it away with some kind of electrical surge that caused all of the light bulbs to get too much power to them too quickly and then bust them all. A coincidence that doesn't happen often. But this is, I think, the last thing we're going to read from this email. and we'll consider it that this is how Lori ended it. I felt this man's body. I saw this man as bright as lightning. I heard this man. My son heard this man, and I will never unsee, unfeel, or unhear him. This happened.
Yeah, I mean, and what was your sense? I mean, obviously from the email, she really does strike a very analytical kind of tone. Like, she really comes off as someone who is describing a thing, not like a half-remembered dream, but like a thing that happened to her. And like you said, Matt, very much trying to suss out and try to rationalize every little detail. Is that how she was on the phone as well, Matt?
She was very much like that on the phone, and it's something that has disturbed her pretty heavily. Specifically because it appears to be affecting her son as well, and they seem to have shared experiences. So it doesn't feel like just something that happened in her sleep and then went away, or something she experienced in a dream state or in a sleep paralysis state. The fact that it bothered her son so much that he was just, it ruined his day essentially. Hearing this voice. And the other thing here is that I didn't go easy on Lori. I was asking her as, detailed questions about all of this stuff, and she was responding, not as somebody who was just making something up. I can't prove that to you or to myself that she wasn't making anything up, but she knows, and I certainly felt that she wasn't. And I'd ask her about the disappearing, because she said that this being appeared in her bed. Then it just kind of disappeared when she said, no, no, no. And she said that it was essentially half a second, couple milliseconds of like a fade out, and then just like nothing. And I would just say that I've experienced something like that before, where I've woken up from a dream. I'm still half asleep, kind of got like my eyes half closed or something. And my dream state is providing images. If you guys have ever seen that, kind of almost like images that are flowing downward or in a circular pattern, that you'll still get the light essentially. I've experienced something like that, but never in the shape of a person with a physical sensation with an audible voice.
You might be surprised what you can do, because that is one of the side doors into lucid dreaming. I mean, I know we use this phrase often gets overused, but that really is a cognitive liminal state. If you're ever in that state, by the way, folks, which everybody is at some point, give yourself some credit. Try to just imagine some cool scenarios. You're basically at that point, you're in the holodeck where you can still steer to a degree. But then once you're out like a light, it's not you driving anymore. It's your subconscious, or arguably you experiencing a quantum look into a universe just to the left of ours, or to the right, or another timeline.
Speaking of that, I've been having a lot of very strange dreams lately. And you have to kind of like really capture them or speak them out loud right when you wake up, or they're very easily just kind of totally forgotten. But I had one last night where it was the three of us, and we were like in a band, and we were playing the new Coachella festival, which was taking place inside a giant church. And we were all there for sound check, and the Atlanta rapper Gucci Mane and his crew were there in sound checking, only they were all very British and not Southern at all. And the three of us sat down in the balcony of the church, waiting for our turn to sound check, and the Gucci Mane and his crew came up to us and told us that we were sitting in their seats, to which I made a big fuss and ended up getting into a fist fight with Gucci Mane. And that's all I remember. But you guys were definitely there.
Don't fight Gucci Mane at Churchella. That's
Churchella! That's great.
Come on. Yes. Come on.
But yeah, that is the moral of the story, I think, Matt. But no, I mean, look, I also, I don't know if this is totally different, but have you guys ever like had like a piece of furniture in your room, or maybe like a coat rack or something, and in the right light or lack of light, it really does look like a figure? And if you wake up from a dream and you see that out of the corner of your eye, you are for a moment convinced that that is an actual figure, that is an actual entity in your room. I'm not saying that's what this is. I'm just saying I have a hat rack on my closet door that's just like all my baseball hats, and it's sort of in a V shape. And because it's a hat, and you picture a hat as being like representing a head, I sometimes wake up and see that and spook the crap out of myself.
Yeah, I've got something kind of like that's been occurring lately, with light coming in from the morning through a window and a tree that's obscuring a certain part where it does form the shape It's a bit human-like, and if I'm still asleep, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, like you said, Ben, our brains can do some really interesting things as that information is being processed, and we're kind of transferring over from one mode to another. What I would say, and what I kind of want to leave us with on here, is that Lori she really wants to know what happened. She has purchased equipment, audio and video equipment that she's set up in her room where this occurred. She's got a night vision,
right?
She's got a motion activated night vision camera that is currently full. The memory is full. So she is capturing it right now, and she's going through it to see if anything shows up. So hopefully we will hear soon back from Lori if she's seen anything or if we've got some footage to look at.
You have to send it to us, Lori. Also, I want to say, just on a personal note, I love your writing style. I think it's clear and concise, and I think you're a good storyteller. One of my favorite sentences that really surprised me in your email, Lori, was when you said, "My alone time has literally been stolen, and I love my alone time." For some people, that might seem like the weird thing to worry about in this situation, but Lori, I get it, and I bet I bet we all get that, right?
For sure.
That's it. I just wanted to say I think you're a swell writer, Lori. And
I'm with you, Ben. When I was reading it almost had the cadence of like a creepypasta story. You know what I mean? Like one of those very condensed, contained, spooky stories. Because I was on the edge of my seat reading it the whole way through.
That's why I had to call her and talk to her, because it felt unreal. And that's the first thing that we talked about, was this feels like something that's been written. And she was just like, no, she was so adamant about it and genuine. She does say that this happened very shortly after beginning to listen to our show. So, hopefully our show isn't haunted.
And it wasn't me. I can't speak for Matt or Noel, but Lori, I can tell you it was not me, at least as far as I remember. But yes, thank you for writing in, Lori. Keep us updated. Other folks who have stories of these similar experiences. If many of us find ourselves doing our best to analyze something from every angle, and sometimes we can't come up with an explanation. We want to hear about your ghostly or paranormal conundrums. Thanks also to Anton, to Jen, to every single person who has written in, who has called. We have a wonderful, wonderful gift of a gargantuan amount of feedback to go through. We're doing our best. We want you to add your voice to this conversation, your takes, your thoughts. Give us your creepy stories on the internet. Tell us your experiences. And we try to make it very easy to find us. You no longer need a Ouija board to contact the show. We've got social media.
That's right. You can find us on the usual spots: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, where we are Conspiracy Stuff and Conspiracy Stuff Show. Our favorite place on the internet is our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. All you have to do is name a name. One of the three of us, the four of us, the five of us, Doc, Mission Control, me, Ben, Matt, name a topic that we've discussed or just something to make Ben chuckle, and you're in. Lots of great meme sharing and friendships, lifelong friendships, if I might add, that are made on Here's Where It Gets Crazy.
If you don't want to use social media, give us a call. Our number is 1-833-STDWYTK. Please leave a message. Let us know if you don't want us to use your voice on the air, or if you don't want us to use your name. It's easier that way, because otherwise we'll just use it, and we're cool with that. If you don't want to do that, there's a great way to contact us. We have a good old-fashioned email. We are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com. Easter egg. Look at this slick mug. You want one of these? T-Public. All right, that's it.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.